Hi, I'm here to tell you about the workflow engine that's now built right into Toolbox. The problems that exist with workflows at the moment are they're traditionally paper-driven and don't have much of a dynamic workflow. This solution is going to help reduce the paper waste and help reduce the exceptions that are not occasionally obvious being missed in workflows. Make sure that you've got something that's more set in stone and an automated procedure to follow. Another problem is that we've got a lot of scripts that do stuff. The main problem with this is that human interaction is generally required. So when we're going from our paper-based system or from one system to another, it means that someone still has to type in this information and start off this automated script. Another little note, RT jobs are great, but they don't have any dynamic workflow behind them, so it's impossible to use it in a workflow-like environment. Let's give you a little example. So let's say that I want to do something, or let's say I want to go on leave. If I want to go on leave, I just can't walk out, so I need to go and see my manager first. I send my application to my manager can then reject or approve it, and then he's got authority to pass that to the payroll team to make sure that everything's in order for my leave to go ahead. So my solution is a framework that goes and builds right into Toolbox. It hooks into all the existing infrastructure, so we don't need to go and deploy or write anything new. There's no great deal of development time required, and it means that complete automation in tasks is now possible. Another great advantage of the solution is that it's a really easy framework to quickly and simply write up some more workflows as long as we can identify the data, etc., etc. There'll be a separate video on that if you're interested. So let's look at an example. I'm going to model Santa's workshop here. So in this example, a kid places an application. Or his wish list, so we say. So the kid places his wish list. It's got a bunch of items on there that he really wants for Christmas. So he puts that application into Santa. Santa then can review that application and then have a look at the items that he wants to approve or reject. And then he has a look at this kid and his reasonings behind why the kid thinks he should be able to get everything on that list. So Santa then flags that list as being, oh, this kid's been naughty or nice. If he's been naughty, he gets nothing. If he's been nice, and it can go down to the elves. Now that little purple box is just to show that the order can be placed automatically. Just going from the kid having entered in the data of the objects that he wants, the order can be placed online automatically, and then once that's done, the process can then come back to the elves to flag the items have been shipped or put into the back of the sleds before the process is closed. Okay, let's look at this. Okay, so let's look at our example showing. So if we open Toolbox, which some of you might already be familiar with, and we log on there, we'll know that we've got a new module now. We've got tasks and processes. So let's start off our previous example. I've already modeled it, our Santa's wish list. When we open this processes management tool, you'll see that the first thing we go into is our inbox. Now, when we enter our inbox, we see this, we have no tasks currently awaiting our action. This will become a bit more apparent as we get into it, but let's say we want to create a new request or a new case. Let's jump in. So we're submitting a new Christmas wish list, and the idea is that in this process we add a whole bunch of items that we want. So let's say I want a pack of highlighters. So item name, highlighter. Item description can be my awesome highlighters of all colors. And the item cost, let's just $12, shall we? Now let's say I also want a fire truck. Fire truck. Loved playing with fire trucks as a kid. Now I'm a little bit older though. The item cost for a real fire truck might be about, I don't know, let's say it's about $100,000. Now the good events. What have I done this year that I deserve this? Let's say I'm trying to convince Santa Claus that I'm good, so let's just say I made Toolbox. It's a pretty good example, I think. So once I've filled in this form, these forms are all dynamically generated. I'll show you a different video if you're interested to watch how to actually create your own workflows, but these are all done as tasks. So once I submit it, I'm saying that my form's been submitted, it's on my way. So if I have a look back in my inbox, see I've still got nothing here, but what I can look in now is my cases. So I can have a look at all my cases I've got, the active, the cancelled, and my complete cases. At the moment I've only got one active. drilling into that, I can see that a full history of my case that goes on. Comments are coming later, and then all the active tasks that are currently waiting on this application, or this process, shall we say. So we can see that at 1:08, it's a bit early this morning, there's tasks being created for Santa to go and have a look at my application. So let's log out of Scott and log on with Santa. Okay, so now when Santa logs on, let's just not remember that, you can see that he's got a little badge here in tasks and processes. So if we click in here and we see his inbox, now all of a sudden he's got a job allocated to his group. So we can see that the Christmas wish list has got a task awaiting Santa's approval. On the 27th of October, way too early. So if we go into this now, we can start to have a look at it. There's a few more little interesting things. The first is that we can now see another piece of data that wasn't available before. Each time you come up against a task, you can actually define what data you do and you do not want to show in this task. So in here we can now check a box to say whether the child's being naughty or nice. Now if we remember back to our example, we've actually got a decision maker here. So if it's not being naughty, then there's no more, if it's the child's not being nice, sorry, there doesn't need to be any more actions taken. Whereas if the child is nice, then it goes on and continues the workflow. So let's say the child is nice, but hold on a second, Santa hasn't got the money in a budget for like $100,000, so we'll just delete that item. What's also interesting now is we've got this little history button here. So when we bring up our history, just like before we saw in my cases, we can pull up a job and then view a complete history on it. Any task you're in, you can pull up a history and see a complete history of the process itself. So once this task's been complete, we'll just hit complete and away it goes. So I'm going to sign out of Santa and back in as myself now. So let's check up on how that case is doing. We can see that another item's been added to the history. The task Santa's approval in the workflow is now being completed by Santa. And if we have a look at the active tasks, we can now see that no longer was it this task was waiting on Santa's approval before, but the active task is now the elves loading up the gifts. So we can see that it's gone down this branch because we checked that box. The order's been placed already, the order's come back, we've shipped, and we're ready to ship our items. So let's just log on to an elf, shall we? So to see it through, log in as elf1, and he's got a task now because he's in the elves group. So if we have a look, the only items that are left now are the highlighters, and we don't see anything else because, to be quite frank, the elves don't need to see anything else to be able to complete the task. So once their task's complete, that's the workflow being done. So we'll just log back into myself. Now we can configure this to send out emails whenever someone gets a task in their queue. We do anything here. We can do anything. So if we have a look in my cases, I've now got no active cases, but the case has now been flagged as complete, and there's its complete history for us to check up on it at any time.